We have a national education system, but not everyone in the nation gets access to it. U.S. territories pay into the federal system, and then they pay more to access it. Do I have that right? We saw from the Super Bowl that people weren't really certain that Puerto Rico was part of the United States. Every state offers in-state tuition to its own residents. The price difference can be massive. But if you live in a U.S. territory, you don't get in-state tuition anywhere. This bill wants to change that.
A is for amazing, that's me. B is for brave, as brave can be. C is for can do, yes I can. D is for dreams big as I am. E is for electric, clap on time. F is for friends, you're a friend of mine. G is for grow and every day. H is for happy hip hop parade. Ja, reach the top. JKLOLLMNO, let it flow.
Hello and welcome to week 14 of Coffee and Calculated Curiosity. I'm your host, Cassie Clayton. This bill is talking about who counts as in-state. The U.S. currently has 5 inhabited territories: Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, American Samoa, U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. Most have limited university options locally. Students often have to leave, though, to pursue certain degrees. Residents of territories pay federal taxes, payroll taxes, Social Security taxes, Medicare taxes. They serve in the U.S. Army, they serve in the U.S. military, but they don't have an in-state tuition option. They are U.S. nationals or citizens, but they don't get equal access to federal benefits, and they pay more for public education. This bill amends Higher Education Act to require public universities that receive federal funding to charge in-state tuition to students from U.S. territories. Right now, many of those students are charged out-of-state tuition even though they are part of the United States. In-state tuition isn't just a discount, it is the difference between being able to attend college or not. For students in U.S. territories, there are fewer local university options, fewer programs, and they often have to leave that territory to pursue higher education. These are individuals who pay into the systems, the federal systems. They are part of the United States, but when it comes to public education, they are treated like outsiders. I think our curious question today is public education a state benefit or a national one? And if you're neither, who's looking out for you?
VWX next Y and Z, you did it.
Digital Democracy Project. We are looking at our U.S. Congressional Federal Bill in 2026, House Resolution 6472, HR 6472. Let's read the bill text. In the Senate of the United States, March 9th, 2026, received, read twice, and referred to the Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. An act to amend the Higher Education Act of 1965 to provide for in-state tuition rates for certain residents of Guam, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, American Samoa, and the United States Virgin Islands, and for other purposes. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. Section 1, short title. This act may be cited as the Territorial Student Access to Higher Education Act. Section 2, in-state tuition for certain residents of Guam, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, American Samoa, and the United States Virgin Islands. In-state tuition rates, Part C, of Title I of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. Code 1015, is amended by inserting after Section 135 the following. Section 135A, in-state tuition rates for certain residents of Guam, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, American Samoa, and the United States Virgin Islands. A, in general, a public institution of higher education that receives assistance under this act shall not charge a covered individual tuition or fees for attendance at such institution at a rate that is greater than the rate charged for residents of the state in which such institution is located. B. Covered individual. In this section, the term covered individual means an individual who 1. Is a resident of Guam, the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, American Samoa, or the United States Virgin Islands, and 2. Is a national of the United States, as such term is defined in Section 101A of the Immigration and Nationality Act, 8 U.S.C. Code 1101A. Program Participation Agreement. Section 487A of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. Code 1094A, is amended by adding the following. The institution will comply with the requirements of Section 135A as applicable. Passed by the House of Representatives March 4th, 2026. Okay, that's the bill. We've read it. We need to get back and find what are we referring to on some of these different things that have come up. Let's look at this bill live on congress.gov. HR 6472. And within the bill, we can find the links to the different United States codes. So we can go in and look up where they're looking to amend these specific sections. Higher Education Act of 1965 to strengthen the educational resources of our colleges and universities and to provide financial assistance for students in post-secondary and higher education. Part C of Title I of the Higher Education Act of 1965. And it's amended after Section 135. So I have found it. It's 1015D, in-state tuition rates for family members of qualifying federal service. In-state tuition rates, Part C of Title I, they want to add in-state tuition rates for certain residents of Guam, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, American Samoa, and the United States Virgin Islands. Because previously, the only information that was in here was about a member of a qualifying federal service means a member of the armed forces who's on active duty for a certain amount of time, foreign service on active duty for a certain amount of time, or an officer or employee. The next piece that we need to get into is the individual coverage. And this is USC Code 110A, as defined here in 101A of the Immigration and Nationality Act, 8 U.S.C. Code 1101A. The term national means a person owing permanent allegiance to a state. The term national of the United States means A, a citizen of the United States, or B, a person who, though not a citizen of the United States, owes permanent allegiance to the United States. Naturalization. The term naturalization means the conferring of nationality of a state upon a person after birth by any means whatsoever. So now we know who's covered and from where. Let's talk about the next part of this program participation agreement. 20 U.S.C. 1094A. The institution will comply with the requirements of Section 135A as applicable. Back again, 135A. A public institution of higher education that receives assistance under this act shall not charge a covered individual tuition or fees for attendance at such institution at a rate that is greater than the rate charged for residents of the state in which such institution is located. The institution will comply with the requirements in Section 135A as applicable. All right, in-state versus out-of-state tuition by state. Now, this was published. This data, average tuition for four-year public colleges, 2021 through 2022. And then we'll look at an updated one. We see by state the amount of increase it is if you are an out-of-state student going to a different state school. Let's find the lowest amount of increase was in South Dakota at the time. In-state was 9,190, out-of-state was 12. Biggest change was in Montana. In-state paying $8,250 and out-of-state paying $30,770, 273% increase. In cost, How has that changed over time? 2025 gathered by. But we can see in the same reversal. So if we go back to South Dakota, this is still this very close to the same amount of cost, 9,000 to 12. And then we know that Montana was the one that had a huge difference. And in 2025, it still has this very large gap from in-state cost to out-of-state costs for public colleges. It's important to talk about why states charge differently. And I think this article has a lot of great information in it around that topic. Most public institutions receive state taxes as revenue to subsidize their expenses. So a student or their parents who paid taxes in the state receive a benefit if their kid goes to a college in that state at a lower tuition rate. It's part of public funding for a college. What you see next is the students are coming from out of state, haven't worked in that state, so they haven't paid taxes in this state and have not contributed to the operations of a public institution. Therefore, they are charged a higher rate so the institution can get its revenue. Everything is about money. That is what we continue to talk about here. These are territories, and because they're a territory, they are required to pay taxes. However, they aren't allowed to vote or have the other benefits of those taxes that they pay. Let's get into the Kealo discussion about this bill. Pros and cons, and then we'll talk to VoteBot a little bit. Some pros that supporters are talking about. This type of a bill would foster equality by providing territorial residents the same in-state tuition benefits as mainland students, reducing financial disparities. Another pro about the bill encourages a diverse student body at colleges as students from various territories bring different perspectives and experiences. And another pro about the bill that's listed here in Kealo increases educational opportunities for territorial students, making it easier for them to afford college education at U.S. schools because they are still a part of the U.S. as a territory. Okay, things that opponents to this bill are saying would cost too much so that they don't want to be seen. This bill would potentially create competition among territorial and in-state students for scholarships and other financial aid resources. Possibly, we would have to look and see if this is going to limit the number of people who could get a scholarship or financial aid resources. If they're saying, oh, these students won't be paying out of state tuition prices anymore, so now we are not going to get enough money, that resource could be raised in a lot of different ways. And also, the states could lobby, these universities could lobby the federal government for more dollars since those students actually paid federal taxes. This bill may lead to increased financial strain on state education systems, covering more in-state tuition differences. Yeah, like I just talked about, going to the federal government for more funding since these students would have paid into the federal government would be one way to address this. And it could reduce the availability of spaces for in-state students due to an increased demand from territorial applicants. Possibly, I don't know that the universities are overbooked at the moment, but we could look. Okay, Forbes reported that college education applications are up back in November 2025, except for international students, and we know why with the current administration going after people who are not citizens. The latest report from Common Application points to a 10% total increase in applications to college as of November 1st, compared to the same number last year. First-time applicants are rising. That's great to see. Applicants were also applying to more schools in 25-26 than the prior year. International student applications declined substantially compared to the previous cycle. Applicant growth was lowest among applications to the most selective institutions, but we're talking about public colleges. Applications to public and private colleges increased at equivalent 10% rates. So college application submissions are going up. From what we're reading anyway, it doesn't appear that there is an overwhelm of students applying to colleges. Well, let's chat with VoteBot. VoteBot, I want to know why Puerto Rico isn't included in this bill. That is another territory, but it is not named in the bill. It does not include Puerto Rico. Maybe because it's a larger territory. I'm going to ask my senator to vote on this bill. Provide me a supporting, opposing, and neutral statement. Dissent. While that's cooking up, let me let you know why I said senator. So, because this is HR, House Resolution 6472, this bill was introduced and it's already passed the House, which means now it would go to the Senate and the Senate would vote on it. So currently, your senator is running around in Disneyland because they're on recess until mid-April. So this is a great time to reach out to them. We can see the actions that have happened already. The House introduced this bill on December 4th of 2025. Then it was referred to the Committee on Education. It went to a few other committees after that. It was reported out, placed on the calendar for a vote. It was debated for 40 minutes. Conclusion of the debate, motion to reconsider happened March 4th. On March 9th, the Senate received and read the bill twice. So that's why I'm saying you can reach out to your senator about this bill. And absolutely, here are 3 simple statements you can use or adapt when contacting your senator about Territorial Student Access to Higher Education Act. These are available here for you to go through, and let's find out who is your senator. We're going to ballot ready. We talked about Montana having the highest cost of education. Let's meet your representatives. We can go to federal and look for the senators for the state of Montana. And here are the 2 male senators that we would be able to reach out to for Montana and ask them about voting on this bill. Again, you could click on their contact information and click on contact. They might have a phone number. You could go to learn more about them and certainly find ways to connect with them there. And you can take the information that you learned in VoteBot, copy paste, make a few additions or subtractions, and send that over to your state senator. Now, because it's a federal bill, we can all do this from any state that we currently live in, which is very fun and exciting. Also, what we can do, because this bill is being voted on and discussed, we could go to vote on this bill. If you are a registered voter in the United States of America, you can sign up with votes through Digital Democracy Project, log in, and vote on the bill yourself. After that, your data it will show up anonymously on the map along with everybody else's who's already taken a vote and on this bill. That information is then sent to your senators when they're in session or if they've wrapped up something. If there's more discussion points and organizations would like to push this information forward, they can see how everybody's voting. This bill is pretty favored from people who have voted on it so far across the nation. We would love for you to be one of those. Check out Votes, the Votes app. You can do it from your browser, you can do it from your phone. It does require for you to be a registered voter, so it'll check all that information. But then you'll get an update, you'll get a text message saying, hey, you have new bills that you can vote on based on your state or based on new federal legislation. It's really quite fun. What I want to get more curious about and calculated on is if you are part of the United States, should access to public education be dependent on your zip code? This has been something we have looked at in courts for the entire existence of public schools. This is not a new thing to fight. This is somewhere where we are broadening out to more people by including territories and not just having citizens, but having people who are nationalized. Higher education shapes the systems we all live in. When people can go and think with others outside of who they normally converse with and learn new things, they can create new shapes to systems that we haven't seen before. Even if you never go to college, you benefit from living in a society where people can. And for people to be able to go to college, they have to be able to fund it. They need to be able to afford it. College isn't free yet, but we could make access to it easier. And we want to be proud of our public education systems and our public colleges, our public community colleges, and being able to have people come in from lots of different locations to be able to participate in those. Access to higher education changes communities, economies, and who gets to participate in decision making. It means maybe more doctors and lawyers and journalists in a variety of locations. If we limit who can access education, we limit who can shape our future, the future we all live in, which is why access to higher education has been put so far out of reach for many. But that is a talk for a different day. Yes, this is about tuition rates. It is about why higher education matters to all of us, because it impacts the world we live in and the workforce we work with and the people who are our neighbors and those that we see at the grocery store or our communities or churches down the road or on our cheer teams. Even if you never step foot on a college campus, those who go to college impact the life that you are building and the world that you're building it in. So this bill is about who gets access to opportunity and who gets to shape the future we all share. Democracy is about creating more opportunities for more people to have their voice in the mix. And America being the great melting pot that it is, we want to hear different voices and different aspects and people who came from different locations. Our citizens and our naturalized citizens and our nationals who are in our U.S. territories, how do we make sure they have the opportunity to also go to school? This has been Coffee and Calculated Curiosity. Thank you for taking a sip with me.